Mr. Rehman, a graduate of Stanford University, is frequently invited to speak on entrepreneurship and internet marketing at some of the world's top business schools and conferences. We are honored to have him speak at this forum today. To start proceedings, I will call upon Mr. Umar Farooq for recitation from the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذا ما أنزلت سورة نظر بعضهم إلى بعض هل يراكم من أحد ثم انصرفوا صرف الله قلوبهم بأنهم قوم لا يفقهون لقد جاءكم رسول من أنفسكم عزيز عليه ما عنتم حريص عليكم بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم فإن تولوا فقل حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم صدق الله العظيم.
Ladies and gentlemen, now please welcome Mr.Monis Rahman.
I'd like to thank BITB for inviting me here to speak to you today. I've been asked to talk to you about my entrepreneurial story, how we started the company and how we grew the company and where we are today. And I thought a little bit about what I would talk to you about, because you are also entrepreneurs. आप लोग भी IT में हैं, you're starting doing your projects and businesses and you're growing. So the one theme that I found throughout my career was the fine line between success and failure. Every opportunity that we've engaged in, I went back and looked at it and I said, if we didn't continue at this point in time, it would have been called a failure. And by chance, you walk another extra step and you cross the line and it turns into success. And this is a theme that I think you're going to hear over and over again. I run a job site in Pakistan, Rosie.pk. How many of you have heard of Rosie.pk? A lot of you. That's all of you. That's great to hear. Rosie.pk, just to share some numbers, and I appreciate the introduction. That was a fantastic intro. But these numbers change very quickly. So today, the latest stats on Rosie, 45,000 companies in Pakistan hire through Rosie.pk. 45,000. If you look at the SECP list of firms in Pakistan, that number is about 65,000. So it's a pretty big percentage. About 25,000 job applications. 25,000 job applications are processed on Rosie.pk every single day. About 40% of Pakistan's unique internet users have used Rosie.pk in the last 12 months. The traction has been very humbling. It's been fantastic. But 4 years ago, nobody had heard of Rosie.pk. So I want to go back. I want to take you back to May of 2003. May of 2003, I landed in Pakistan. First time that I had ever lived in Lahore. No operational knowledge of how to operate in Lahore. I spent most of my career in the US. After doing my grad work at Stanford and after working at Intel, making microprocessor chips and starting .coms, one day May 2003, I decided to come back to Pakistan. And there are a lot of reasons for that, and I'll speak about those in detail. So jab main aaya wapis, I didn't have much. I'd raised a very small round of investment from some people who are now very, very well known. At that time, they weren't as known, including the founder of a company called LinkedIn. How many have heard of that? So Reid Hoffman was an investor, and this was right when he started that site. And I moved back, and there was a small room in my house, which is about half the size of this stage. And I had a server in the US, and I put 4 computers there, operating out of a room in my parents' house. I made a hole in the wall where I put a door so people could go in and out without having to go through the room. And just started to work on this idea. And the idea was driven by belief, by passion, and by something also a little bit irrational. To leave an established career and a path where I was fairly successful as an individual, come back to Pakistan and operate in a country where I'd never run a business in the past and start from scratch was a little bit irrational, but it was founded on a deep belief and a passion that there was an amazing opportunity. But when we started, the main issue that I had at that time, 2003 ki baat kar raha hu, hiring. I needed to hire. As the business started to grow, I needed to hire. And I asked lots of friends who are running very big IT companies down in Pakistan, how do you hire? Where do you go to hire? And at that time, the conventional wisdom was to hire through a newspaper. You would put an ad in Dawn, half-page ad, 8.5 lakhs, and you would get applications, screen them. And when I thought about this, I related to my experience as an entrepreneur in the United States where, I had brought back to Pakistan with me a very small amount of money. And at that time, 8.5 lakhs was about $12,000. So $12,000 ek din ke ishtihar ke liye for advertising. It didn't make sense for me. I was operating in a small room of my house. So what ended up happening was we said, okay, let's create an online job site for our own hiring. We had a need. And this is a theme I want to hit upon. As an entrepreneur, if you can become a customer of your own product, you can really understand the market need for the product. If it can work for you and become successful for what you're doing, it's very likely it's going to fulfill needs of other people. So we just launched this job site, and we didn't know what to call it. We named it Rosie.pk, which is actually was a bit of a joke at the time in between friends, because when we would talk about why I moved back to Pakistan, how I would earn a living, Rosie was always the word that was used in a humorous way. So I said, let's call it Rosie.pk. The site grew very quickly, so we couldn't rebrand it. So now we still have Rosie.pk. But the origins were very much intentional. This was a Pakistani site meant for the local landscape, meant to address the local issues. So we used a PK extension at that time. Agar aapko yaad hai, 2003 mein very few companies would deliberately use a PK extension. People say, why are you using .pk? Do .com. We also own that. We have a .com extension. But we said, we want to brand ourselves as a Pakistani company. We use .pk. And it was one of the first sites, known sites, to use a PK extension. And so we started to put our jobs on. Other people started to apply. More of our friends started to put their jobs on. We began to hire through the site after about 3, 4, 5 months. And I think about 6 months after we launched, a third of my workforce was hired from the site. I said, yeah, it's interesting, it's working. But we still didn't make it a commercial success. We didn't turn it into a business because it was fulfilling a real need, so we kept the site going to help us hire. And pretty soon the traffic growth was just astronomical. It was impossible to overlook how many people had started to advertise. It started off as a site for IT jobs, because we had IT jobs. More people started advertising IT jobs, then people started advertising jobs for accountants, so on and so forth. And during this period, we hadn't spent 1 rupee in advertising. And to this day, I'm very proud that we don't spend money on advertising, but everybody in this room has heard of our site. And that's another thing I want to talk about. So, what we did, when I moved back to Pakistan, and I launched this internet site, people ask me, what do you do in Pakistan? I said, well, I've got this job site that I'm running. My friends in the US said, are you crazy? Why are you going back to Pakistan to this internet site? When I came to Pakistan, the skepticism was much worse. Yaar, idhar ye cheezein nahi ho sakti. Tum America se aaye ho, udhar ye cheezein hoti hain. These things happen outside. Idhar ye cheezein ho hi nahi sakti. There are already 30 other job sites operating in Pakistan, and they don't work. These guys are starving. Why are you doing it? Now that was an inflection point. I could have said, yeah, they're right. These are job sites hain. They're not making money. They're a flop. Why am I investing all of my time? I could have said, chalo yaar, isko close karo aur kuch karo. That is a fine line between success and failure. We could easily have gone the other way. And I think the difference is that you persist because you have a belief. So we continued. And very soon thereafter, we said, okay, now let's try to make a business out of this. How do you make a business? How will people pay in Pakistan? And again, everybody said, yeah, Pakistan mein people can't pay online. Online ka payments ka nahi hai, internet pe tum ye kar rahe ho. How are you going to collect payments? It's doomed to fail. We started to think, okay, payments, how do we do payments? And we started to innovate. We can get a rider to go and get cash. We can accept checks. How do you build the process flows? So we did that. And now we get over 100 new jobs a day that are paying every single day, either through online, through your Easy Pesa or a Visa card or a cash transfer. So that obstacle was overcome. But my first sales meeting, when we decided to turn Rosie.pk into a product, I remember I went myself and we went to speak to a very large bank. And the person we were speaking to, very hard to get a meeting with this individual, a very senior person in the HR industry. And they had a meeting, there was a conference room, and I went and they had a whole team of their HR people there and said, we have this internet job site and we can help you hire, you can put your jobs on my website and you'll be able to hire. So this individual was, at that time, almost twice my age, smiled and said, do you really expect us, we're a very big brand, we're a bank, do you really expect us to advertise on the internet? And there was a big laugh in the room, big laughter. And I said, okay, this is going to be a bit of a challenge. This is not going to be easy. So that was a perception. The internet at that time was used by people to chat. It wasn't a credible medium to operate a business. That customer became a client and is still our client today, along with 45,000 other clients. But that was another point, that the market we went to for validation, it's amazing, it'll really help you, save you time, you can easily... So there was a perception that really needed to be overcome. So during the course of time, the internet also grew in Pakistan, and we knew these numbers. We were looking at it. We were looking at all of the massive investment that was going on in the internet. You had the telcos starting WiMAX. All the towers were going up. You had PTCL with all the wireless. DSL was exploding. Cost was coming down. So when you worked the numbers, it was very clear internet was growing. It was growing at a really fast rate. So the fundamental belief that this was a business that hadn't had traction in Pakistan, but had all the ingredients for success based on everything we've seen globally. And the market was getting ripe for it. That was the belief that drove us. So we sustained the business for 2 years without any income, zero revenue. Didn't charge anybody. We said, use it. And then the first time we tried to charge somebody, they laughed at us. But waqt ke saath saath that began to change. And we got one client, we got a telco, we got a bank, we got the United Nations, all 22 agencies started to use us.